Joining me today is Nick Sands. He is Channel Partnership Manager at Third and Grove, where he manages strategic relationships within the Shopify Plus ecosystem. Nick brings extensive experience in digital commerce and previously served as VP at BWG Strategy, where he connected industry leaders and luminaries through executive networking sessions. Third and Grove, he works with partners like Shopify, Klaviyo, Yahoo, all the blue chip guys to help brands optimize their digital commerce experiences. Nick, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you did a great job, probably better than I can do talking about myself. But yeah, I was at BWG Global now, actually, 10 years before moving on to something new. The Connect division is specifically actually, Tim, where I think we met once we had launched Aaron Cohen and I had launched BWG Connect and really stood that up. But yeah, you nailed it. My background has definitely come from connecting senior professionals to one another, mainly in the world of e-com, digital, marketing, fintech, ad tech, martech, all of that fun stuff.
It's great to have you here. Let's start by discussing what AI implementation trends you're seeing that actually deliver ROI rather than just being buzzwords and stuff that gets off the PowerPoint and actually into these organizations.
That's a great question because right now, obviously, there are companies out there that are embracing AI with open arms and diving head first into all of it. And then you're meeting challenges, especially when you talk about your larger organizations, your publicly traded companies, who it's not that they don't want to use AI and it's not that it's not on their roadmap, especially when they're speaking to their investor team, investor relations and everything else. They want to hear and see that AI is on the roadmap, which is great. The issue that comes with that is outside of maybe the CTO and their department at these organizations, there's definitely a lack of understanding on security, data privacy, compliance concerns, things of that nature that these larger entities, especially those that are publicly traded, are really nervous about when looking at embracing AI with open arms. And where that really impacts the ability to integrate these solutions is within marketing, within anything that's really touching and scaling data, in a large way. Where there has been adoption has definitely been areas of internal operation improvement, content, depending on the organization. I've seen it be used and I've seen it be a large blocker, and that includes areas like creative for marketing teams where people are very nervous about sticking to their brand guidelines, making sure that it's not obvious that AI has helped create a piece of content. But there's been plenty of chatbots is probably an obvious area where there's pretty wide adoption already for at least conversational AI, and even interest in moving into that agentic AI conversation where it could be search. It's all search related, of course, and hooking that back to your CRM data, which, cue your data privacy concerns there. But that's going to kind of be the next wave of this, is now taking it from AI as we know it today, where there's use cases, it's trained off of your data model, it's trained off of your brand, it understands your site, your FAQs, things of that nature if it's a chatbot, but getting to the point where there's a level of comfortability at scale for those larger enterprise organizations to move into agentic AI, where it's not only reading that information and off of those training models that you're feeding it, but now it's able to search across a specific company, contract, person directly in your CRM and take actions related to whatever's going on with that individual person and what you know about them from what you've gathered over the years.
What do you think about the challenges of evangelize that inside of a building in one of these big logos? Is it the cleanliness of the data? Is it the infrastructure? Is it the people? Is it the culture? Is it the fear? I mean, what are you seeing out there in the marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, it also, I think a lot of it starts with what, how AI is being characterized in the media. It's, of course, there are going to be jobs that are impacted by AI. It would be foolish to say that there won't be. But in a lot of cases, especially in e-commerce and marketing and digital, omni-channel, retail, internal operations, HR, there's so many areas and departments where it's just leveling people up. It's getting them to that next growth phase of their career where they can take that busy work off of what they're doing. They can take those monotonous tasks. They can help with data cleansing, as a one of those topics, and really improve upon this stuff end to end. I think where the blockers are is that, going back to that fear and that data privacy side of things. So, something that I feel like a lot of people and organizations really need to understand is that you not only aren't you using the publicly facing, data pool and interface when you're developing your own space for your AI model. That's a big part of it. This data is not getting back to these platforms if you've set up your own space appropriately to where everything is just training off of your information, your data. I mean, it's the same. If that were the case where, OpenAI or Google Gemini, let's say, for a more specific and probably a better example for this, if Google Gemini, if you set up your own space, you did everything properly to where this is just supposed to be for you and your organization, end-to-end security, data, all of it, Google's not taking that information back and applying it towards training Gemini for the general population or feeding it to your competitors. That would be like saying Google Cloud is doing the same thing. You're using Google Cloud, you have everything dedicated, your own servers, everything, but Google's taking that data and feeding it now to your competitor who's on Google Cloud. That's not happening. And if it is happening, it's people wouldn't be one of the largest cloud providers out there.
Are you still seeing reticence out in the marketplace that there's fear that that's going to happen or could happen or whatever? Like you remember, Amazon first started really becoming the Amazon today. There was this fear factor that if I go on there, they're going to know everything about my customer. When, quite honestly, they're going to know everything they want to know. I mean, they're, massive data company. I mean, like some of these old sort of like, I would say, misheld theories, really weren't a thing. It didn't really happen. Are you seeing that become like a problem today, or is that just getting overblown?
No, it definitely is. It's a blocker. I mean, it's for sure, I would say the largest blocker. It all comes back to data privacy and compliance in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot of fear around, that data transfer occurring. And Amazon, if people were able to get over that hurdle, which, most organizations have at this point, they should be able to get over this one. If you set up the appropriate infrastructure, if you go and acquire your own space, if you're going on OpenAI as an individual person user, using the free version, let's say, yeah, I mean, that data is going to get back to OpenAI. And same thing with Google Gemini. But if you set the infrastructure up appropriately, you're not going to have those security, data privacy concerns outside of a breach, of course, which is always a risk just in general. But it still remains the largest blocker is that what's going to happen with our data? Is somebody else going to get access to it? Are you going to train your models on it? And really that lack of understanding. The other thing that you had mentioned is also true on the data infrastructure and data cleanliness. Like, you're only going to be able to take AI as far the depth and the cleanliness of your data, whether it's in a data
Very
lake,
true.
whether it's in a CRM, converting between the two. So you really can't maximize
At what point of the hype
anything
cycle
AI.
are brands on that? So are brands like understanding that they're, on the back end of the hype cycle where okay, I got it. It's out of the news and now I know what to do with it. Or are they wrestling with garbage in, garbage out? And that's just an age old thing. Like, what are you seeing?
I think it's a mix of both. There's always organization. There's never going to be a time, I don't think, where there isn't going to be garbage in, garbage out as a core, fundamental pain point for brands out there and B2B providers for that matter as well, regardless of whether it's a SaaS-based platform, an agency, or whatever else. AI is being adopted for sure. And in some cases at scale, there's plenty of companies that are running very lean on the full-time employee side and very tech-enabled at this point and have embraced AI with open arms, which, this is kind of another wave where if you're a brand, very similar to, being a first mover on Amazon or on Shopify, where you can get into the game right now, you can break into a category if you set yourself up in a more sophisticated way, and sophisticated doesn't necessarily need to mean more expensive, especially with how early stage many of these AI companies are. then you can break into some of these product categories that are very difficult, very challenging to get going with by being very smart about not only implementing these AI tools, but then maximizing all the bells and whistles, at least that apply to your brand that they offer.
So brands out there now leveraging this to enhance purchase frequency and purchases in adjacent categories. Are you seeing brands out there now? If you have 10 brands that you're looking at, how many of those 10 are like really on the edge of that where they're like actively, they got somebody in their building, knows what they're doing with it, and he or she has a line of sight to the rest of the organization and they're galvanized behind it? Out of 10 brands, how many are on that bleeding edge? And then how many are, where are they on the spectrum?
That's a good question. I would say, probably 1 or 2 out of 10 are at the bleeding edge. Everybody is using a technology provider right now that has AI capabilities, whether they're leveraging it or not. It could be somebody like Gorgeous. Gorgeous has conversational AI going on right now. And that's, people have had Gorgeous for a long time. And because of that, technically they are leveraging AI now. Whereas when you first implemented it, you weren't. Not in the way that we understand it today, at least, the definition of AI. So it was still based off of machine learning, of course, and all of that. So a lot of organizations, I would say if you ask how many organizations are using AI, it's probably 9 out of 10. But are they maximizing it? Are they looking for those newer and up and coming solution providers that are solving for things like conversion rate optimization, personalization, things that are really driving growth and increasing AOV, LTV? Yeah, they're starting to. And it's, I think, specifically focused where I'm seeing a lot of technology providers come up, whether it's direct or indirect. It's surrounding conversion rate optimization and or personalization. Most of the newer AI tech providers that I'm seeing are leaning into one, if not both of these themes, and for good reason. I mean, they are probably 2 of the best areas to leverage AI for, and areas to where there will or should be ROI, because that's key to investing right now. If you're a brand, it's really difficult to get something through the finish line with everything going on, in the market and the economy and with tariffs and all of this type of stuff. So if you're going to get an investment, either better be, well within your budget or below it to get that quick approval, or there better be some very, very interesting, lifts in your core performance metrics like AOV, like LTV, like an improvement in your conversion rate that make it well worth the risk to try out. Because if you're wrong as a director of ecom, VP of ecom right now, it's a tough job market out there. And, with budget being so tight, that could be a fatal, mistake that a lot of people are nervous to, stick their necks out and take those risks right now.
One question I know, and that's a great point. The vendors that you're working with and that you're closest to, I've not seen any, and I'm curious because you have a broader vision of this. Are any of them out there getting into SLMs or specialized learning models where they're getting category specific? In other words, is there any sort of platform out there that says we have an awesome consumer electronics solution versus an apparel solution versus a food and beverage solution? Are you seeing any of that yet out there?
Yes, there's actually a lot of interesting, AI startups that have popped up and are solving very niche pain points. Forgetting the name, of course, as you asked me that question, of a couple of them where I've seen some very interesting demos. But for example, there's one, and if I remember the name, I'll share it, where basically what they've optimized for is product design and product development for fashion brands. So, putting together a new concept for, a dress or, another article claiming geared towards not just, apparel, but also geared towards females. So there are some, there's an example right there. There's another solution provider that I saw. This was actually at Ken Pilot's event in December where a couple of these solution providers were showcased. So it's not even like brand new, because these companies have actually both been around for a while. And one of them, the one I'm about to go into, that does the same thing, but for custom tailor-made suits, has actually been around, for I think it's a decade or more, and really just pivoted their business model. So you're getting your right specs and everything you want end to end. So you can walk into, purchase a suit. They might not have what you want on the rack. you can actually custom make and design it right there in-house, leveraging AI, made to order, shows up either back in the store or at your doorstep right from there.
Wow, it's wild. I think as this evolves, you're going to see a lot of like SLM thought go into how these products are built. So to your point, that head of ecom, she's a little nervous, whatever, about investing the money in something like this. But as this evolves, it's going to learn. Look, women's clothing, right? It's going to get that much more dialed in. And look, things like TrueFit have been around for a while now, and they were really groundbreaking 10 years ago now. And if you think, say, like, okay, you've got any number of data points that you can select on fit, shoulder, cuff, height, whatever, that will just get that much more involved. And I think you're going to see a lot more risk, I would say, to swing into these things. And I think that, it's exciting. Are you seeing any of these things actually material to improve convert? Because I'll tell you, my own personal journey with this, initially, not that much, but we were looking at things that weren't necessarily tied to conversion, time spent on website, number of hits, things like that. And then you saw, you know what, all the other things are equal. You normalize for all the things you're doing. The game changer was having a lot of this technology seen in MarTech and AdTech. And eventually we saw some improvement. I just wonder if what you're seeing.
Yeah, there's definitely, there's AI-based solutions that's what they're boasting about, is improvement of conversions, let's say, whether it's conversion rate or in some cases it's just increasing basket size, with product recommendations and things of that nature. Bundling, like, hey, if you're about purchasing X product, you should also consider adding these, to cart, which obviously that's been around for a long time, especially on marketplaces like Amazon. But there's some really interesting solutions and ways to now bring that onto your D2C site, which that brings up kind of a whole nother conversation is, the direct-to-consumer site, the purpose of it is ever changing, depending on the industry, category, the brand, the size of the company, all of these different factors, right? One thing that's going to remain true consistently is that's going to be the place where, if somebody cares about understanding the specific product, the specific brand, what is this company about and how is this product made? A lot of people are very, becoming much more and more aware of not only the quality of the product, but like, in some cases, where are they sourcing materials from? Is this stuff all coming out of China? And is that something I should know as a consumer today with things like tariffs going on? Like, am I not going to get my next order on time because of something else? There are things like that that are being considered, as well as, especially if you're in like cosmetics, health, food and beverage, what are the ingredients of this product? Like, people are becoming more and more health recommendations end to end.
It's such an evolution of where we've all sorted out in this business and where it's going. You bring up a phenomenal couple points there. One, I just want to spend a minute on the point of these brand websites. I to me has dramatically changed over the last like 3, 4, 5 years. It used to be a cash register of sorts for a lot of these brands. You were selling D2C, it's inherently longer margins and what have you. But Day and Walmart and Target and all the marketplace have accelerated. They've become, in many cases, not those have become the cash register, but the brand site, while it always needed to represent temple of the brand and experiential stuff, that's becoming a much, much more a bigger focal point, right? For what that brand site needs to be. As they become less the cash register and more an experiential, I like to say elevator stop along, the consumer's journey where she goes and understands the brand, that it's not a commodity and it's really a special thing. There's not a lot of obvious ROI to that. You really have to broaden your horizon to find the ROI. It's very, very clearly there. you really just have to look at it over, different metrics.
Yeah, I think that's another one where it really depends on the product category, and in some it really varies on from organization to organization. Some really get it and they understand we need to have a site and we need to rally around what the intent and purpose of that website is, which is, by the way, more and more true. Like, we know that product search mainly starts on Amazon. We know that, just general search typically takes place on Google. Talking about AI and just kind of bringing it full circle for their consumer journey here, and thinking, if I'm thinking about it from a brand's perspective, are people going to continue to go to my site? But you will be able to do search and research on, specific types of products that you're looking for when you don't know the exact product you're looking for, just figuring out, what brand should I go with, why, all of that via ChatGPT. And that will actually link you not to Amazon or not to back to Google for, hey, you can look here. It actually is going to link directly to Shopify sites. So that's that's going to happen. That's not an if. That's already underway right now, and Bit has OpenAI partnership announced and all of that. So that's the first leg of it, is making sure you're optimizing on the SEO side, not just for Google, but now factoring in these AI models.
I think you have an awesome point of view on that, and kind of how brands should be thinking about really evolving the whole SEO conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, think about when you want to type something into Google, or when you really the difference between how you search on Google, if I'm just looking at myself at least, versus how I interact with ChatGPT, is a lot longer form. So what that means is the way, SEO is fundamentally always going to be very similar, and not exactly the same, but it's not going to change drastically. You're now just optimizing it for basically another way of going about search. So really understanding your brand, your value prop, and just understanding your differentiation points, that's always going to be incredibly important. And it's now even more important for that to speak through to your website. So that feeds perfectly also into the next point of what I was going to say of what to use the website for at this point beyond just commerce, which is you should be educating your consumers. They're coming to your website a lot of times because they're looking to learn more about either, well, obviously your brand in particular, but potentially also, that product that they're going after, regardless of the category or industry vertical. They want to understand something to make their decision of whether they're going to purchase from you or not, whether that's on your website or not. And that goes back into, how are you optimizing, what KPIs you should be tracking towards. I think it's very possible that there's going to be a new metric that we're going to come up with. It'll have an acronym that we'll all hate for a little bit and then get behind. And it's really going to be truly understanding the holistic impact at the end of the day, one way or another, to your overall sales and how your website feeds into that, whether it's retail, online on your website or through Amazon or somewhere else. And that kind of will tie it all together from SEO through purchase.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I've been pushing this concept of, ever since Zuckerberg and Cook were building an 11-foot wall, 12-foot ladder, that whole thing that unfolded, what was it, summer of 20, I think it was, something like that. I've sort of gotten back in any businesses I've looked after, from 50,000 feet to an old school ad to sale ratio. So just an old school numerator, denominator, all ads to all sales. And if that's a good number or a healthy percentage, keep moving forward, right? All the KPIs under that, of course, they matter. They all matter, but they all eventually ladder back up to the same thing. And if you're steering the ship, I think you're right. I think more people are going to go back to that because all these brands, they're everywhere now, right? They're on, Hulu, they're on Prime Video, they're on Twitch, everything. And it's harder and harder to switch that. You got to zoom way back out and just say right track, wrong track, okay, why fix it? Right track, why go, blow that out? I think you're going to see, the industry move, I think quite a bit more that way. And I'm sure, knowing the industry like we do, I think you're exactly right. Someone's going to invent some, dopey, acronym that you're going to look, really? That's what we're going with? Okay, whatever. And, to your point, we'll hate it. And then, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. And that's how, oh, your blah, blah, blah was good. Yeah. I'm interested how we can really use this stuff, AI, to stitch together online and offline, data. I mean, with you've got innovations in all sorts of things, but there's things that do this, but connecting online to offline, it's is tough stuff. And like it's all doable today, right? You have clean rooms, you have signals versus cookies, you have all this stuff. It's challenging, but what's even more challenging is to simplify this because there's just so many moving parts today. And I really think that there's all kinds of, even in the face of tariffs, commoditization, all these crazy things that we're living through right now, really, really do believe that brands that are well run and that they get it, like you mentioned earlier, brands that get it. I think even in a very, very challenging environment, I think they've got a window of the next 5, 6 months. They can probably start clawing back share that they might have ceded to some no-name commodity B brands, nascent brands, whatever you want to call them. I think the brands that figure that out and that they invest $1 on Meta or YouTube or on Amazon, if I do it right, that should help my Costco store business over the weekend. Like, I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Definitely. I mean, you probably know that better than anybody, honestly, of tying all of that information together and, being able to see the true impact of a dollar spent on, what's gained back, regardless of where it comes from. There's plenty of ways to tie that stuff together. It's not easy to do by any stretch of the imagination. It takes a lot of time, a lot of understanding of, everything, where you're spending, where are your potential new customers coming from? How are they getting there in the first place? Tying all of that back throughout the customer journey it's doable, but that doesn't make it easy necessarily, of course. Then there's solution providers out there like, Buxton, which just merged with Elevar, that are working towards, full picture.
I think the brands has figured that out and, that know how to partner with the right solutions and how to measure the stuff the right way. Think that I just believe these guys have lots and lots of opportunity, and it's not all doom and gloom out there. I mean, there's brands out there doing pretty well. I mean, there's business to be done out there. And what's interesting, I'm from my whole career in digital. The brands that figure out, I think, that 70, 75% on average in most categories is still done at retail. And like that's not going away. I mean, you add up all the points of distribution for Walmart, Costco, Ulta, Sephora, all these guys, Kohl's, you add up, it's tens and thousands of points of distribution. And you can't just swing the pendulum one way and just hope for the best. I mean, I've known you since I was at Jimmy Jazz, and we lived through there. Nike, they really they pivoted very, very hard to D2C, and D2C for them meant app, DOM, and stores. And I think what they sort of realized, and they learned a lesson, which was like, what, this makes sense on paper, but if we go too hard in one direction, there's still all these points of distribution. And with them, what you've seen is they've come full circle on that. They go, you know what? It really, really is an omnichannel conversation, and share matters. Share of shelf really, really matters. I mean, these are conversations that kind of went away during COVID when everybody was .com, all hype. But these conversations went away. I keep hearing them come back, and it's awesome. It's really awesome because you have technology now that can really stitch this stuff together. Whereas even just 5 years ago, it was a little iffy.
Yeah. That's very true. It's got, I mean, that's something where we actually didn't talk about this as much on the AI topic, but, a lot of these organizations, a lot of these tech companies, they're using AI just for themselves to get more efficient and more effective and to provide a better service. So it may not be sitting on somebody's website that, this is AI tech enabled, but many of these technology companies are the ones who are really embracing AI and really using that to drive their products forward, at a faster clip. It's a lot to learn from, the B2B tech world right now on like not just what they're putting out there as far as direct AI products that can be used, on a B2C site, but also how they're, leveraging AI to, in some cases, spin their own product up and, features, functionality, things of that nature at a faster clip.
On that, I think it's a great point to end. I want to thank
Yeah, thanks, Tim. This was awesome. Really, really fun. I appreciate it.